Hello, and good evening, Chiwempala. Good evening, Zambia. Good evening, Lusaka Central and Kankoyo. Good evening, Chipata. Good evening, Mongu, Monze. Good evening, world. Some of you are catching us on TVBAKWETU on our social media platforms, on Elias Munsha pages, on Bakwetu page, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, as well as Twitter. We're going to give you a few moments to spread the word around, because we have with us here today the Honourable Minister of Justice, Honourable Mulambo Haimbe, who is joining us and who has joined us already, and my co-host is Linda. But we are also coming live to you on KBN TV. That is on DSTV channel 279 and Topstar channel 102. And so you can catch us both on our social media platforms as well as on satellite TV on channel DSTV 279 and Topstar channel 102. We are still here with you, and we are treating you to a little bit of Kalindula before we continue with our program. So enjoy and keep sharing with as many people as possible. Thank you very much again. Elias Munshe here on TVBAKWETU with my co-host Linda Banks. Linda, good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Munsha. Good evening, Zambia. Mulishani, mwashukeni, kumbi olobalebuka, chungulopo mkwai, mwalibi yabuti, mutende mwane va Zambia, and diaspora, not forgetting the beautiful diaspora. Good evening.
All right. Thank you very much, Linda. We are on DSTV.
We are. How exciting is that? Now, I'm trying so hard to behave better than we normally do. I think it's going to be quite interesting to see how the rest of the team behaves. We're on satellite. How exciting is that?
Now, you just have to behave the way you've been behaving. So you mean that before satellite, you were misbehaving?
I think Turachitako misbehave panonos. You know, it's more chilled. People have got snacks and we just sort of talk as we wish. And we have to be careful with the phrases that we use now. If you're joining us on DSTV, welcome. This is Bakwetu TV. It's a family of voices that are pretty much dotted all across the globe. If you hear me speaking Lamba or Lenja or Bemba, please do not be offended. We are at liberty to speak in our own preferred languages. And
thank you,
Dr. Munsha.
All right, thank you. Now, we have with us a very distinguished guest. He is a lawyer of many years, deep legal pedigree. He stood as a candidate in one of the most competitive seats in Lusaka Central, the center of Zambia, right there at the center of Zambia, State House constituency, and everything else. And he is member of parliament for Lusaka Central constituency. And recently, he was appointed as the Minister of Justice. And that is no other than Honourable Mulambo Haimbe. Honourable Haimbe, welcome to TVBAKWETU tonight.
Good evening, Elias. Good evening, Linda. It's great to be here. I was last on this platform a couple of days before the election. Very electric. And I'm grateful that you've invited me once again to speak to the issues post-election. Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers.
So we would like to first of all congratulate you for scooping Lusaka Central.
Yes, thank you very much. Much appreciated. I would say it's a victory for the people of Lusaka Central, so I would use this opportunity to say thank you to them for showing that confidence in not only myself, but now the new Dawn government. It is quite a historic moment.
How was that? The entire election?
It was... Yes, sorry, there's a bit of a time lag, but I think your question was, how was that, the election? The election was very competitive. Many people didn't believe that Lusaka Central could be won by myself, could be won by the then opposition. We did our groundwork, as I had said at the time that we last spoke. We had taken note of the people, the will of the people, the aspirations of the people, and simply respected that. Of course, that's not to take anything away from my fellow candidates in the election, my competitors. We all did the best that we could. We gave each other a run for our money, and here we are. Ultimately, it was the youth. The most, I suppose, gratifying feeling was going around the polling stations to those, each of them, and seeing those young people on their phones, resolute, decided that they want to make sure that they bring in the change that we needed. And to them, we say thank you. We know that that is our largest constituency.
All right. And then a few weeks later, there was that wonderful inauguration. I was seated right behind you at Heroes Stadium. And I could see, because I'm very observant, so I could observe the kind of joy that you had on Inauguration Day. Could you let our viewers know a little bit of how that was for you?
Yeah, that was again another feeling of I'd say, and as though it's not reality. It was a feeling of now the responsibility starts to weigh on the shoulders, because you see the reason that we have these formalities, I suppose, in every walk of life is it creates an understanding that, look, things have changed. And that moment was a very proud moment for all of us as Zambians. We took every opportunity that we could to make sure that those that were able to fill that stadium to capacity, and the formalities, again, as I say, were splendid. The military were up to the task. The neighbors from across the region were there, and other representatives of foreign nations were there. It was really, really an awe-inspiring moment. At some point, I think I would have probably shed a tear, but then there were too many people around watching.
I think that even when
just whilst you're on that personal touch, I'm more interested in knowing how in God's name did you find yourself in the legal fraternity? If you could just talk a little bit about your family background, as in parents and siblings, and briefly about your current nuclear family, please, and how you got into law.
Okay, great. Unfortunately, the line is breaking a little, but I'll do my best to answer your question as I hear it. So I think you asked the background, family background. I come from a family which has been involved in the, shall I say, the politics, service to this country for a very long time. My late father was Brigadier General Honourable Haimbe, who served not only in the military up to the level of deputy commander of ZAF, if I can put it that way. Of course, the titles were different at the material time. Subsequently served in Zambia Airways, went into politics, was member of parliament for Livingston Central, and then was appointed. His last portfolio before his death was as Minister of Power, Transport and Communication in the UNIP government. And then subsequently, obviously, MMD took place, and in 1993, he passed on. My late mom is Dilis Haimbe, Dilis Njoromba Haimbe, again, a person that has served this country diligently. And so this is where the drive begins from, because we were nurtured as a family to understand that we are part of a society, and in being part of a society, when the calling comes, you must be there to serve. And the call to service for me came in or around. I've been a member of the UPND from 2012, but only became active in 2016 thereabout, 2015 thereabout, as things began to take a nosedive in the country. And I realized personally that look, you can't continue to sit on the fence, and you need to play a role. And that is when the decision was taken. But before I go a little more into that, in terms of my personal life, I'm a legal practitioner by profession. I hold a Bachelor of Laws degree from the University of Zambia. I qualified to practice law in Zambia at the Zambia Institute of Advanced Legal Education in June 2001. So I've clocked 20 years of practice plus. I hold a Master of Laws degree in construction law and arbitration. My forte is alternative dispute resolution. That's where my heart is. I'm an arbitrator as well. I became the first fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators of the UK in Zambia in 2008. And just to give an indication to the viewers out there, that my fellow fellows, if I may, are and eminent persons of that nature. I think we have now about 10 or 11, if I'm not mistaken, fellows, high court judges, senior engineers, and so on and so forth. And so that is my professional background. In terms of work experience, I've worked in the commercial sector mainly. I've worked for Copperbelt Energy Corporation as legal counsel, subsequently Barclays Bank Zambia PLC as legal counsel as well, before coming back to private practice in the firm of Mulambo & Co, where I've worked as a partner for the last 11 years. And interestingly, Our founding partner in that law firm and senior partner is State Counsel Vincent Mulambo, former Minister of Justice for the Republic of Zambia.
Oh, right.
My family life, yes.
Fantastic.
The apple doesn't fall too the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, apparently, in all senses of the expression.
That is true.
And
Do you have any
yes, thank you. Sorry, could you repeat that?
Do you have any children? And if so, do you think you would want them to follow
Yes.
in the same footsteps as you yourself?
Well, I want them to do what their heart asks them to do.
Okay.
Yes, I'm married with 4 children. The oldest being 16, currently in secondary school. 3 boys, 1 girl. The youngest is 5. Yes. So yes, they are a very interesting bunch. One of them is standing right here, dancing right now, and watching me and trying to distract me. It's my daughter. So she's writing the
come and say hello.
Yeah, she's run away now because I outed her. And yes, we are Catholic. We're all baptized in the Catholic Church. I was baptized as an adult in 2014. We're married, my wife and I, in the Catholic Church. In fact, we'll be celebrating 17 years of marriage just this weekend on the 16th of October.
Excellent.
So that is me in a nutshell. And in terms of my siblings, I've got 2 brothers and 2 sisters, one of whom lives in the UK, actually.
Okay.
The other in Canada. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. We might be linking up with them. Fantastic. Over to you, Dr. Mbuja.
Yeah. Now, did you know that you would be minister before?
Well, no, certainly. The focus was on getting those votes for His Excellency the President. The decision for Lusaka Central, by the way, was, of course, I live here. I've been associated with Lusaka Central the better part of my life. I went to primary school at Woodlands A Primary School, which is in Lusaka Central, secondary school at Kapalonga Boys, which is my polling station, and the President's polling station in Lusaka Central. I live in Lusaka Central now. So the focus, many people came and said, you know what, your late dad was an MP for Livingston. The name is still there, did a lot of work. Go and stand in Southern Province, you are guaranteed to win. And I thought that's a very poor attitude, with due respect to those that have stood in our strongholds. But for me personally, I thought that would be a poor attitude on my part. One, it wasn't challenging enough. And secondly, how do we add to the votes of the president? If we want to really make change and bring a difference, let's go for the challenging seats, those that people think would not win. Of course, it's a bonus to have won, but with each and every time that I went out, we campaigned for the president, campaigned for ourselves as a team. And the fact of the matter is, well, whether or not I'd have won, I would have contributed significantly to the presidential vote. And that was the focus. And really, yes, you'd think, yeah, it would be nice if I won as MP. It would be nice, obviously, holding Lusaka Central, which is a key seat. Everybody was telling me that you expect a ministerial portfolio, because it's never been left out. But to be honest, I thought, yeah, well, maybe another portfolio, not justice. It's really a feeling that a lot of confidence has been placed in me.
Now, I see that it's been busy. It's been a busy year. It's been so many things, and the campaign. Of course, we caught you a little bit during that time of the campaign and everything else. So how are you doing personally? Is anyone asking you how you are doing?
No, actually, you're the first outside of the family. But yes, there is concern. The concern is, of course, you're always advised, make sure that you take care of your health, drink a lot of water, do exercise whenever you can. Those concerns do come across, yes, quite often. But I think right now the focus of those that put us into office is it's not about you, it's about the country. Make sure you do what you promised, and that is what's predominant. You have to be a little superhuman, because I start my day, I'm in the office by 7:30. I start my day literally 3-4 o'clock in the morning if I'm to catch up with my WhatsApps and other things.
Wow.
And we get out of Parliament on a parliamentary day. 1840, 19 hours, 1910. And then you have to then catch up with all those phone calls that you missed during the time that you're in Parliament. So you'll only be taking rests 21, 22 hours. It's a long, hard day. And you can't tell the electorate that you people, I'm human, please give me some space to rest and all that. You just have to be polite and accommodating as much as possible, because those are the expectations. I'm sure as time goes by, things will settle a little more and we'll have a little more time to ourselves. But I would like to say thanks to my wife. At some point she said, enough is enough. Let's go off for a couple of days. And I was able to rest. But there's not been much time to sit down and just unwind, per se.
I would say perhaps start listening to some videos of Dr. Mjajati. He has some excellent ideas on how to look after your health whilst you're working.
Yes, he does. Especially for us, the men folk, yes.
Exactly, absolutely. He's just brilliant at that. Now,
Yes.
Honourable Haimbe, my very first serious question is about the Public Order Act, because I know we needed to find out how you are and how you're doing. It's very easy for us to just pounce on you. You've had a very long day. We appreciate you coming here. But we have some pertinent questions that our people really would love to get answers. So the first one, as I said, it's about the Public Order Act. Do you confirm that it's a bad act? And if so, do you think it needs to be revised? And if you think it does, how long do you think we should give you for you to revise that? That's the first question. And second one, I'll be giving you in twos so that it's quicker for you to respond to them. Then the second one is, what about the right of freedom of the press? What do you commit to as Justice Minister? What do you commit to, and in what sort of time frame? And that's the end of that question. So if you could answer those two, and then I'll pass it over to Dr. Munsha.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so let me perhaps give a general background to the way in which all questions relating to my portfolio, the Ministry of Justice, will be answered. One, the policy perspective that we have taken now is obviously driven by the UPND manifesto. And of course, one of the key tenets in the UPND manifesto is a return to the rule of law. So that is what we want to achieve as part, amongst the various things that we want to achieve as part of our governance structure. And this was reiterated by His Excellency the President when he came to Parliament and gave his opening, his speech during the opening of Parliament. And several things were said, but in respect to my space specifically, the President was clear that from amongst the 4 thematic areas that would inform our governance of the country during this initial 5 years and beyond was the pillar that he referred to as good governance. And that incorporates a number of issues, including a holistic review of our statute book, of our constitution, and of even the institutions that are mandated with running the affairs of the country. Which of course include the law enforcement agencies, the judiciary, and so on and so forth. So that is the broad picture in terms of the mandate that the Ministry of Justice has been given by way of the policy guidance from the President. Our role now is to put into place what the policy guidance that has been given. And this will have to be done within the framework of legislative changes, which is what you referred to, and of course, ultimately constitutional reform, which we'll talk about, I assume, in a little more detail later. We have now been in office, the cabinet has been in place for just shy of 3 weeks, a month or so, probably less actually. It looks like 2 years already. It looks like 2 years already. So, so far, I have, and the team at the Ministry of Justice have hosted a good number of stakeholders in terms of those that have an interest in the way that matters to do with governance of the country will be handled. Of course, key amongst them are our stakeholders and of course, our cooperating partners from foreign nations. All of those have been there. I think I'm hosting the EU tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. Why I talk about this is because that is a direct path to us achieving some of the objectives that we want to achieve. Now, to answer your question specifically, amongst the key priorities in terms of legislative review is the Public Order Act. And you have asked the question as to whether I can confirm that it is a bad act. I would not necessarily put it so narrowly. I would say that the act, in the way it is applied, has got the potential to be being abused. Because every piece of legislation, if you do not have the correct gatekeepers in place, can be misused and abused. So what is our objective? Is to make sure those elements that have been misunderstood, that have been misused or in the recent past in that particular piece of law are dealt with in such a way that you reduce the scope of possible abuse. So yes, the Public Order Act will be looked at with a fresh pair of spectacles, with a view to ensuring that it's not used as a tool of oppression going forward. That is one of our key objectives. The President also spoke about the fourth estate in his speech to Parliament, the media and the importance of media freedom and the importance of the media playing the role that it ought to play as itself a watchdog over government. And in that being said, one of the other pieces of legislation that we have put forward as a priority, as a day one condition, together with the Public Order Act, is the Access to Information Bill, to make sure that it is finally enacted. Of course, we'll have to look at it as well with a fresh pair of spectacles, enhance whatever provisions need to be enhanced, and then proceed to possibly legislating in respect thereof. So I hope I've answered your question, though long-winded.
That's all right. You have. I just wanted to know what sort of time frame should we give you in order for those to be?
So as we speak now, the processes have begun. You will know that, for example, the policy framework of our colleagues who had power just before we got elected is probably completely different from ours. So all the pieces of legislation that need to be enacted need to go back to the instructing departments so that they look at them afresh and then come back. So the process is such that Cabinet needs to give its approval and then approval in principle, and then the stakeholders go back and look at there are a number of drafts, by the way, that are already out there. Look at the drafts, put in the alignment provisions to ensure that the drafts are aligned with the aspirations of the government and, of course, the people of Zambia, more importantly. And then it goes back to Cabinet before it can be tabled to Parliament. So that process, assuming that we begin today, the pieces of legislation go back to their various instructing line ministries and so on and so forth, would ordinarily take about 3 months before you have a bill in Parliament which can be considered. So let us just say anywhere between 3 and 4 months.
Brilliant. We will hold you up to accounts on that one. Over to you, Dr. Munsha.
And BAKWETU TV would be proud to know that this is the first time I've actually given a time frame of that nature. And the reason I've done so is because I'm aware that we have taken certain steps, and this is something that is deliverable, all things being equal. But certainly, that is our aspiration.
All right, thank you. Now, Honourable, there are some hot issues, and one of them is the appointment of the Chief Justice. So we have State Counsel John Zangwa, who wrote a letter to His Excellency the President, President Hakainde Hichilema, requesting him or trying to ask him to reform the appointment of the Chief Justice. Of course, there is a vacancy in that office now. And in today's News Diggers, somebody responded to you and said, the Honourable Minister of Justice is completely wrong on this point. We want to give you an opportunity to speak to viewers about that. What happens with Chief Justice?
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so the proposal as it goes from State Counsel John Sangwa in his letter to His Excellency the President was that, look, why don't we open up? He was suggesting to the President that the President should ensure that the process of appointing the CJ is opened up such that applications are invited from the general public who will be interviewed, and the people who play a role. This is a summary of the letter as it was written. And the people who play a role in ensuring that the person that is selected as Chief Justice is approved by them. And the long and short of the proposal. And this proposal is not anything new in our jurisdiction in terms of the region, because it's done in South Africa. Very recently, I think we were watching what was transpiring as some of the interviewees in South Africa were being interviewed publicly. And you could see, of course, a couple of people who were completely at sea. And that is a good thing. So the starting point is to say the proposal by our legal luminary, Mr. John Sangwa, is a welcome breath of fresh air. It's a welcome idea. But my response to that particular issue, which I put across on a couple of different media platforms, was that the law as it currently stands, not necessarily the Constitution alone, but the law as it currently stands does not provide room for this to be taken on immediately. And we also need to be alive to the fact that, yes, State Counsel is a key stakeholder, being a renowned legal practitioner in our country, and State Counsel. But you'll also know that, for example, the Law Association of Zambia took a slightly different view to that of State Counsel. And there'll be a number of different people who give different views. So that in itself is a starting point. If we, as a government, would take the view of one person and immediately act on it, I think would be acting rashly. We have to take a holistic approach, listen to various people, and follow the legislative processes before we can implement a significant change in the appointment process, such as that proposed. I think it would be folly to rush on the basis of what one stakeholder, for example, has said, or two or three. That is why the legislative process in itself is a rigorous one. You go to line ministries, proposals come, and it's an open public process. And so it is, I think, a little bit expecting too much to that the appointment of this particular Chief Justice, which is pending and in train actually already, would follow the processes suggested by some of the members of the public, State Counsel Sangwa included. But more importantly, when you look at it from, by the way, I did respond to State Counsel Sangwa on 7th October, on Friday, on behalf of the President of the Republic of Zambia. So he has my views in writing. But there's some key issues you'd have to consider. For example, the very suggestion that His Excellency must prescribe to the Judicial Judicial Service Commission the mode of appointment of the Chief Justice entails that you're asking the President to breach one of the fundamental principles that dictate how that commission should work, which is the principle of independence and impartiality. The law is very clear in Article 216 of the Constitution that the Judicial Service Commission must not work on instruction from anybody. So the very letter suggesting that His Excellency must ask the Judicial Service Commission to take a particular approach is to all intents and purposes possible, asking us to possibly violate the Constitution. So we can't go down that route in the manner suggested. That is not to say that we are saying the proposal is not progressive. No, please, we must not be misunderstood. We're simply saying that with everything that is suggested, you must take those practical steps. There are other considerations. The suggestion that the people must play a role, it came as a suggestion simply. There was nothing in terms of a legal framework that was suggested as to how the people would play a role. There is nothing in the currently existing laws, both the Constitution and subsidiary legislation referring to the appointment and the manner in which the Judicial Service Commission executes its function, that gives a platform by which the people will participate. Now, is the suggestion that they'll simply do so without a legal framework? The answer to that question would be no. Interestingly, Professor Alumina, in his article in the Diggers newspaper, also recognizes the fact that there is need to generate a set of regulations or subsidiary legislation which would govern how this proposal would be put into effect. Of course, the suggestion was that could be done overnight. It's not something that's so difficult, but anybody that knows the long and short of governance, the long and short of creation of legal instruments and legal frameworks will agree that you cannot do that in that manner. There are several other matters that I brought to the attention of State Counsel Sangwa. For example, what happens in the event that the persons that apply are not suitable? And how do we determine that they are not suitable? Where is the criteria that would determine who is eligible to apply? All that is not existing in the law as we speak. So it's not something that you can take a brush at and simply say, let's do this. In the meantime, there is a situation that needs to be addressed in the fact that the office of Chief Justice substantively is vacant. And of course, anybody who's constitutional in nature or interested in matters of governance will agree that you can't have a vacancy for a prolonged period. And in order to give effect to the proposals by the Learned State Council, it would entail a significant period of time would have to be used to put in place the necessary frameworks to give effect to that particular proposal. And so the long and short of what I'm saying is that it is not desirable at this particular time to stall the process of appointing a Chief Justice pending the putting in place of the necessary regulations or subsidiary legislation, and indeed even constitutional change. By the way, Article 140 of the Constitution, which deals with the question of appointment of the Chief Justice, provides only that the President would appoint on the recommendation, and everybody knows that a recommendation entails that it can be, the President is not bound by the suggestion that is put forward. The discretion remains with the President to make that decision himself. And of course, in order to streamline the process, if we were to change it to accommodate the suggestions by Learned State Council, we would have to, by necessity, address that particular provision of the Constitution, which would entail the possibility of a constitutional amendment. So all this cannot be done, as I said, at first blush. You would have to put our minds to it, would have to ensure that it meets the aspirations of the people. So for this particular appointment, this would not be possible.
All right. So for those that are catching us, we are coming to you live on both social media, our social media platforms, as well as on DSTV. And so we are coming to you on DSTV, on various channels, on KBN network. So on DSTV, we are on DSTV channel 279 and Topstar channel 102. And then on our social media platform as TVBAKWETU. For those that are on Facebook, you can send stars. For those that are on YouTube, you can send thumbs up and share and send YouTube gifts and everything else. If you pay, it will show. That's the slogan of our competitor, but that is slightly different. But Honourable Haimbe, the way I get the answer that you've given regarding the Chief Justice, it looks like when you were on the other side, you spoke slightly differently. When you crossed over and became the government, you are speaking slightly different. Are there any shocks? Is there any cultural shock that you have received after crossing over and being in government?
Well, I wouldn't say cultural shock per se. Of course, from a personal perspective, it's a completely different. You're not as independent in terms of your movements and all this as a private citizen. But those are the functions of government.
Even thinking, right?
Protocols.
The way you think when you are in opposition, Philip Sanaim,
no.
Maybe you lose the passion. Well, do you lose the passion?
No, not at all. I think the passion is a little more regulated because now you are speaking with a certain office, and when you are in opposition, for example, your focus is very, very simple. It's to provide those checks and balances in view of what the ruling party is doing. But on the other side, as ruling party, you have to absorb so many different interests and take care of them. So you'll have to be a little more tempered in the manner in which you address these issues, because you're not speaking only for the interest of the ruling party, but for the interest of the entire nation. And for that, you have to have a sufficient balance in the manner in which you deal with things. In terms of the ideals, as Bamunsha has put it, because at the end of the day, I still want to ensure that those promises that I put across, for example, as Member of Parliament for Lusaka Central, are achieved. I want to make sure that the aspirations that we gave the people of Zambia, we shared, rather not gave, but shared with the people of Zambia, are met. And that remains at the topmost of our agenda. I know for sure that with His Excellency the President, it's exactly the same. In fact, I would say that the passion is even stronger now to make sure that it was not just lip service, that we do apply the things that we said would apply. And the very fact that we are engaged in this platform at a time like this, post-election, I think is also an indicator that we have the same mindset that we had before. Because what tends to happen is you get into power, you're in office, you're MP, you're minister, why do you need to further engage with people? But we have to keep that fire burning, we have to keep that momentum going, and we have to keep showing the people of Zambia that we are subservient at the end of the day, and we are accountable. And that is why we come to platforms such as this. We speak candidly, you ask those difficult questions, and we answer them so that we can satisfy the people of Zambia that we are still the same and nothing has changed, other than the fact that we're the ruling party now.
Good. I'm glad you said that, actually. Looking at what happened sometime last week with one of your colleagues, another member of parliament, I won't mention his name, on the Copper Belt. When he hears this, I'm sure he'll know. I'm glad you mentioned the fact that you haven't changed and you're able to engage with people like us on this platform. So this member of parliament was approached by a member of the public who is a staunch UPND member and asked for a photograph, and they refused and said, we've stopped taking photographs with people. Which I thought was quite poor attitude, considering that those, I thought I'd just throw that in there because it did irk me a little bit.
I really hope that everyone out there, they're entitled to their views of what transpired. The Honourable Member of Parliament and actually Minister I don't know if he's actually responded to this, but when I viewed the whole video, I thought people were a bit heavy-handed on their opinion towards what transpired, because if you watch that video from end to end, you will see that the Honourable Minister was talking to each and every member as he walked to the door of the house where he was going. And the musician, staunch musician, staunch brother of ours, who's actually played a key role in the campaign, was sitting at the door, just by the door of the house. And the Honourable Minister talked to about 3-4 people before reaching where the gentleman was seated. And he spoke to the gentleman in what I call appeared to me to be a joking fashion. They were laughing. There was comradeship between them. So I don't know whether or not that incident can be taken as arrogance. I do know the Honourable Minister personally, and he's one of those that is very, pun intended, frank in the way he does things. If he's unhappy with a person, he will tell him straight to his face that if you watch, he would not waste, he would not mince his words. In the same way, if he was serious with that, I think he would have said it in a different way completely. So I'll take it with a pinch of salt. Yes.
Well, thank you for defending him. I hope he can come out and clarify that, but I will take your word for it. My next question, Honourable Minister, is something that is really making a lot of people kind of in a bit of a, what we call here in England, in a bit of a pickle. People are really kind of really frustrated about this. So in the interest of justice and the rule of law, Do you think that the previous cases that that happened in the previous regime should be reopened, especially the killings of different people, like in Samansama, and the young student at the University of Zambia, and the young boy, so many that I can't actually itemize. So do you think that should be opened? And I understand that the president is kind of going on the route of forgiveness, but shouldn't there be a truth and reconciliation so that these poor families can have closure? And the public are so angry. We are in diaspora, but we can see these things through the video. Just a few days ago, something terrible happened at one of the courts, I think Lusaka High Court or something like that, where the public decided to take things into their own hands and sort of manhandling this person who was accused of having killed people. So basically, I just want to find out, do you think in the interest of law and order, should there be an open inquiry and truth and reconciliation type of thing happen?
Yes, thank you very much. The attitude that our people have at the moment is born from 10 years of frustration. They are impatient, which is they are very right. They want to see things done yesterday in terms of a number of things, appointments, bringing people to book, and so the question that you ask is of cardinal importance. You mentioned a couple of cases, the death of Samansama, Joseph Kaunda, Vespas Mujila, you name them. You can talk about even just in the recent election, there are allegations that a senior member of the Patriotic Front in the Northern Province, Mr. Kungo, chairman, was killed in what amounted to political violence. There are other allegations. A line of millions of people talk about young Mazura, who was killed for wearing UPND regalia, a third-year student at the University of Zambia. Very emotive. Talk about Lawrence Banda, who was shot in cold blood by allegedly unknown people. The thing about these cases, many of them, there has not been any person per se that has been made to account. As long as there is an extrajudicial killing, somebody's life has been taken in circumstances that amount to homicide, regardless of whether it's for political expedience or whatever the case may be, there must be closure to the extent that is possible. The police and other investigating wings are obliged to make sure that they bring closure to these matters. So this is, I think, goes beyond simply the political environment. I think it sends, we should send a message as the people of Zambia that we will not condone the loss of life by reason of political violence or indeed negligence on the part of those that are given the authority of looking after our lives. So yes, where there are cases that have not been closed, if it is so desired by the people, if it is so desired by the law enforcement agencies, those must be reopened. I do not think that it should be something that the president should weigh in respect of. A criminal offense is a criminal offense. He should actually take a step back and let the legal processes take their course where necessary. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about a person that was harmed on account of being UPND, or a person that was harmed on account of being PF, or indeed people that were harmed on account of the phenomenon known as gassing. Anybody that watched the videos during the era of gassing would be horrified that Zambia reached those levels. And we need to take responsibility and take steps to ensure that that never happens again. We saw horrifying videos where suspected gassers were burnt alive, and there are children in that crowd, and this person is breathing in pain whilst burning. And I remember one particular video where in Nyanja somebody commented, says, "Chinunkira munga nkumba." That tells you that we've got to a level, which we've translated for those that may want to know. He, meaning the person, the gasser, the suspected gasser that was being burnt, was smelling like a pig, or not even smelling, was they are smelling nice, actually, which is very horrifying. And there would be small children in these crowds. Nobody has even taken the step to step back a step back to ask, what have we made of those children? Have they gone away with a sort of trauma or a new approach to how they see life, how we see life in Zambia, that is normal for us to kill one another in those horrifying ways? All those are issues that need us to heal as a nation. And if it means bringing culprits to book, if it means having commissions to investigate what transpired and come to a conclusion, we need to do what's necessary so that we have closure, and so that those that believe they can take the lives of others and just go scotch-free without any retribution should know that that is no longer the case, that there is a new approach and we must respect one another in terms of our lives, in terms of our freedoms. I should be able to wear what I want without being beaten up. I may survive the beating, but I'll remain scarred for life for having been stripped. We've had women stripped. We've had situations even in the last election which left much to be desired. So the necessity of reopening, as you put it, or opening or looking at these matters with a sense of seriousness is driven by the fact that it will lead us to healing, it will lead us to closure, it will lead us to go to make sure that anyone that wants to involve themselves in such will be visited by the long arm of the law. And that I think is a fair enough motivation for us to look at these matters as holistically, and to use the expression of the president, past, present, and future.
Right. Is there now I think, and thank you for that response. I know that we have so much material, and in fact under your ministry, Honourable, is what when I look at them, they're like 1,000 things or 1 million things that you need to attend to.
It's so wide.
So we've got to move to something else. Any constitutional review mechanism coming up soon?
Yes, the constitutional review process. I think we've made promises already at the highest level. The president has committed to constitutional review, to constitutional reform actually, and has gone so far as to talk about wanting to put in place a new Bill of Rights with justiciable rights in there, socio-economic rights recognized properly. So there is a huge process of constitutional review coming up ahead. The question that you have asked, though, also raises subsidiary questions, ancillary questions. And for me, I've been consistent on behalf of the government in saying that the very process by which the Constitution will be reviewed has to be by consensus, agreed by consensus. It has to be a stakeholder-driven process. What do I mean by this? There are several ways in which a constitutional review process can be undertaken. The way that we have done in the past from the 1970s is through a commission of inquiry, where a constitutional review commission is convened, go around the country, take views and so on and so forth, and then submit a report to the government of the day of their findings. We've had several of them. I think Dr. Munsha is more well vested in this than me even. So I would defer to his wisdom in that regard. Of course, as far aware as the Choma Commission up to the Mngomba Commission, a lot of material has been gathered. So the people themselves, all the stakeholders, will have to speak to the question as to whether or not we want to use a commission, for example, to undertake the constitutional review process, because that is the very beginning of consensus building. We can't impose as government and say we'll ensure that a commission of inquiry is convened. That would mean that we are going in the wrong direction. So the very starting point is to determine the nature of the constitutional review process that will be undertaken. Other stakeholders, I can speak, for example, of the fact that the Law Association of Zambia has written formally and said it does not believe that we should go the commission route. Rather, let's convene a technical committee. That is a stakeholder, a key stakeholder that has spoken and whose views must be heard and respected. Other stakeholders have weighed in. Professor Ndulo has also given his own view of how he believes the process should be undertaken, that it should be left to the experts, to the technocrats, to Dr. Munsha and himself and others. That is a view that would have to be considered. So we would have to make sure that we first get that consensus. We all agree as a people, to the extent that is reasonably possible, that we will undertake the process in this manner. And then the substantive review process can begin. How do we get the views of the people is another question. Are we going to convene sittings across the country to have those submissions, or are we going to invite submissions and tell people that you can drop your submissions in a box? All those are driven by cost considerations and so on and so forth. The long and short of it is that the will on the part of the government is there, and it shall be done. The constitutional review shall be done. But the process is, I think it's early days yet for me to commit on behalf of the government of Zambia, and indeed on behalf of the Ministry of Justice, that it will be done. I know I can see the question, Linda, even before you ask it, in the next X period. That I unfortunately
like timelines. I want to come back to you and say, right, Honourable Minister, you said 3 months. It's 3 months.
For the constitutional review process, unfortunately, I am not in a position now. And I believe in speaking honestly. I'm not in a position now to say this is the time frame, but it is also a key priority. The unfortunate thing is that it's also driven by huge cost drivers. If you are going to do a holistic review of the Constitution, including to Part 3, which contains the Bill of Rights, that means that you have to budget for and fund a referendum. For example, that is not a simple thing to do, especially in the current economic environment that we are in as a country. So I really would not be able to speak in a very informed fashion on this particular aspect of the time frame. But of the constitutional review process, certainly we shall do it, and that, I believe, is one of the legacies I would want to attach to my name. That we get a constitution once and for all, people-driven, and which meets our aspirations, so that we can sit like the US for another 200 years with only minor amendments, rather than reviewing the entire constitution every 5 years when we have a new government.
All right, thank you on that. There are several bodies, statutory bodies, under your care right now, several. I think some have been realigned and reassigned to State House or something like that. But in your view, when you look at your bodies, any just brief plans that you have, how are they?
Okay, so
what are you looking at?
I would like to hold this up. I hope that can be seen. That's the Gazette notice that has been referred to a number of times in the last couple of weeks. That is Gazette notice number 1123 of 2001. This Gazette notice, by the way, I will probably be issuing a ministerial statement on the floor of the House in relation to the misconception that has been created by essentially the opposition members of parliament in the House and outside, in respect of the realignment, as it is called, of certain statutory functions. I think, let's give a background to this. There was new ministries created, a merger of ministries that was done in order to fit in with our objectives of governing the country properly. So, for example, we have a new Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises. We have a new Ministry of Green Economy and the Environment. Then we've realigned many of the other ministries. So this necessitated the issuance of ultimately, first of all, a paper, if I may call it that for the sake of simplicity on this program, to Parliament, explaining the processes that needed to be undertaken in order to give effect to these changes, and so that Parliament could then approve the proposed changes. So that paper was done, and basically the way that paper was done was to show the functions as they were before. In the annexure to the motion that was put on the floor of the House. So the annexure showed the ministries as they were before, and other statutory functions as they were before, and the proposed realignment, what would move to where. So you talk about, for example, where we are now, the statutory bodies under the executive branch, Office of the President.
Honourable Minister, we are only interested in what is under you, because, and in fact, here on TVBAKWETU, we helped explain some of that misconception.
Oh, great. Okay, so I need not go into too much of it.
Yeah.
All right. So basically, the Ministry of Justice did not change.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. That saves me a lot of trouble. So yes, in fact, long and short of it is the statutory functions that are aligned under a particular portfolio are there mainly for administrative convenience. So, for example, one of the statutory functions that sit under the Ministry of Justice would be the judiciary for administrative purposes. The budget for the judiciary is presented by the minister. It's under my responsibility as the Minister of Justice to put forward the budget for consideration by the Minister of Finance, and ultimately the Minister of Finance presents it to Parliament for approval, and various other functions. Some of the other bodies that are under the umbrella of the Ministry of Justice, and by the way, are fully autonomous. We have no role in how they execute their function. The only cross-cutting areas are in terms of administrative requirements, and that's for a simple reason that they don't have their own specific cost center. So it's done through us in terms of for budgeting purposes and other administrative purposes. You have, for example, the Legal Aid Board, which is fully autonomous, that sits with us in terms of getting a budget. Ring-fenced funds are sent to them, and we have no say in how they use the funds. All we do is to be their mouthpiece. And several others. The Zambia Institute of Advanced Legal Education, you name them, there are quite a number. So the idea is that
the Zambia Advanced Institute of Legal Education, I think, needs some funding to move from that place to a big, well-built university. Honourable, you're a graduate of that institution, and that institution should not be meeting in a chicken run.
I agree 100%. In fact,
the meeting
I can disclose that I had a meeting with them, and we talked about these issues at length. The people of Zambia believe that Ziale fails students. That is not the case. Legal education must reach a certain standard in order to ensure that the people are protected when you unleash those lawyers on them. So it's going to be rigorous. But as you rightly said, Dr. Muisha, the challenge is the institution has grown, or the number of people going to the institution has grown so exponentially that the institution is struggling. You have 400 people in one class, which was intended to be a sports hall. There is nowhere in the world that tertiary education, that advanced education of that nature can be delivered that way. Even with the little academics that I know that the most effective delivery method is by using small effective groups. So as soon as you have 400 people sitting in one class and being taught by one lecturer, you have a problem. And one of the things that Ziale is aspiring for, and that perhaps we discussed and they suggested, we talked at length, was, for example, having satellite campuses of the institute, one on the Copper Belt, one in northern, one in southern, one wherever is required, so that you decentralize the whole process. And also, the delivery method by part-time lecturers needs to be addressed. We need to have full-time staff and treat the institute with perhaps what I would term the respect that it deserves. Because as we speak now, the ratio of lawyer to client in Zambia is very poor. We can't continue that way. We certainly need more lawyers. We certainly need them to be able to ply their trade better. And if you don't have the institute working to the highest levels of efficiency, you have a problem. So I agree with you, Doc, that that's something we have to look at, perhaps in the medium to long term, at least speaking from the perspective of a 5-year mandate.
Right. We're quickly running out of time, but what I'll do is, Linda, imagine.
Gone quickly, hasn't it?
Time goes by very fast when you are having fun, and this is very good fun.
That is true.
But Honourable, so I'll let Linda, my co-host Linda, look at some of the comments from YouTube, and then we're going to ask you those. But the model of our TVBAKWETU is that we have a huge family of YouTube. Of TVBAKWETU family. We call it TVBAKWETU family or TVBAKWETU crew or whatever it is. We are a huge family, and we have some questions. Now, in most cases, we just come together at the same time. But today, I'll be bringing one at a time. So don't be tired.
Okay.
You're going to get to hear some different perspectives here with our family members.
Great. I was actually reading some of the comments in the chat room already just now.
All right. Oh, okay. So that's the good thing of having a young. Are you a young man?
Yes.
What constitutes youngness? What do you mean? Are you a young man? What is young these days?
Young at heart. I'm 45.
Honourable, you've got a baby face, so we can assume you're young.
But
I'm receiving that with a lot of joy because you get old very quickly in these portfolios.
That is true.
Yeah.
First question, Honourable.
Yes.
I have someone from, actually, I know this person. I think this is why they sent this message. They are a journalist at ZNBC, and they say that they proudly voted for you.
Thank you.
They're very proud of you. But they're just a bit concerned about people from Bowlen dumping garbage at a site in near ZNBC. It sounds minute, but I think they care so much about this, so I thought I should just read it out. What are you going to do about that? Because apart from being the Honourable Minister for Justice, but you're also a Member of Parliament. So the question is, what are you going to do about the lovely people of Bowlen dumping all this garbage near ZNBC?
Yes, it's not only near ZNBC. There's another huge pile of garbage that sits on just off the main road near the market, Katambalala Market, in between Katambalala Market and the Bowlen Primary School. It's very, very disheartening. It's one of those things that touched my heart from the word go. That pile of garbage has been accumulating for almost 4 to 5 years, and the process of cleaning it up only started as we were heading into the election. It was never completed. And funny that the question should be asked, and thank you very much for the vote, by the way, from that constituent. What we did just last weekend is I kicked off. I had started a solid waste remediation project way before, which stalled, and then I kicked it off again last week using resources through my foundation, the Mulambo Haimbe Foundation, and partners. The NHF Housing Empowerment Initiative gave us trucks and front-end loaders to physically go and remove that garbage. I know it's a drop in the ocean, but you lead by example. Every journey starts with one step. My commitment is to ensure that in the next couple of weeks, that area is the 2 areas are completely cleared up. Of course, I have to, and I know this platform is a perfect platform to appeal to those who want to help. We don't want money at all. We want help in terms of bring those tipper trucks, bring those front-end loaders. We'll look for or if you're able to put diesel in them or whatever you can do, because money is a problem. I don't want to receive cash, nor do I want any of my team members to do that. I want us to deal with this as a community effort. People should bring resources. I can't do it alone. The city council has no capacity to do it. And that is, by the way, a short-term measure, because all we want to do is to clean it up. It's a vector for disease. It's not good to have children exposed to that, to have the community exposed to that. And we have the rains coming anytime soon.
Wow, yes, cholera is knocking. Yeah.
Yes, when it rains, that garbage, the mess starts to seep into the groundwater. It's dangerous. We can't have that. So I'm taking practical steps in the best way that I can. To have that cleared, and I'm engaging with various well-wishers and stakeholders to do that, the physical removing. But the bigger challenge is with the solid waste management generally. The reason we have those dumps there is that it's become profitable for people to illegally bring garbage from elsewhere. It's not all generated in Bowlen. It actually comes from elsewhere. As we were removing garbage on that material day when we flagged off the exercise, there were trucks that were coming in to come and throw garbage at the site, which is near Katambalala Market. It means there's illegality going on there, and someone is profiting, because that's not a gazetted dumping site. The gazetted dumping site is in Chunga, the landfill, which of course is a different problem. In the longer term, I would like to ensure that the Solid Waste Management Regulation and Management Act of 2018 is enhanced. Right now, it just talks about recycling. It doesn't give an end-to-end process as to how recycling can become a part of our lives. So I would like to ensure that that piece of legislation is enhanced so that we begin the process. For example, it's very easy to require under the law that shopping malls should have receptacles for garbage to allow for recycling. And that is the aggregation process. That's where we begin. I know that in the more poor communities is a little difficult. But if we think outside the box, we can add value to this process by encouraging the process of recycling, encouraging there to be a value chain from the process, from the beginning of the process, aggregation of the waste till the end, which is processing. And if you can make money out of garbage by being proactive with your legislation, then you start to sort out the problem. But more importantly, in terms of Bowling and other areas where there is illegal dumping, we have to put in place physical security in terms of the police need to play their role, and I'm looking into that. And also we have to find a way of ensuring that if there's any money that's exchanging hands, it goes to the correct people. The problem is that it's going in the wrong pockets. So they dump there and then it never gets to Chunga. Sorry, again, another long-winded question, but I think
that's all right.
It exhibits the passion that I have for this particular area and for Lusaka Central as a whole.
Fantastic. That's okay. There's a comment on Facebook from Conrad Chisumpa, and he just says, given Lubinda is nowhere near the level of Haimbe, we've raised the bar of leadership. If PF wants to bounce back to power in 2026, Bakosefye big time.
You can't escape politics, Honourable Haimbe. You see, you are very well distinguished here. You are even wearing a necktie.
Exactly.
But people can't leave you alone to just be very distinguished. No, we're happy to go back. If anything I miss is the Anjenja and Jenja days. I mean, in the fields they are doing the thing. I would only say thank you to Conrad. Thank you very much, Conrad. We really would want to raise the bar. And of course, without taking anything away from anyone, if we raise the bar, then it means that our competitors, the now opposition, will also improve. And then that benefits the people of Zambia at the end of the day. Checks and balances all through. So if Honourable Linda is listening, he's a fantastic person. He's a very good human being. But of course, as the PF generally, their leadership left much to be desired, and they need to up their game. Even when we speak in Parliament, you can tell the difference.
We won't go there.
Okay.
Some honourable gentleman was sent out the other day, which was quite hilarious.
Yeah. Dr. Barbara, we have less than a minute to ask a question to Honourable Mulambo Haimbe. Dr. Barbara Chanda.
Thank you very much, Bamunsha. Welcome to our BAKWETU family, Honourable Haimbe, and congratulations on your appointment and for the next week for your anniversary as well. I just wanted to ask, in the UPND manifesto, one of the priorities was to open up access to justice for all. I'm not a lawyer myself, I'm in a medical profession, but I don't really understand, because when it comes to justice with poor people, they seem to be exacerbated so fast to go, everything is dealt with in such a fast rate that they are dealt with, they go to prison so quickly. Whereas the wealthy people within the country, all of a sudden you hear the whole process of the law, you see Bamunsha and yourself start discussing the ins and outs of the law. For some reason, it doesn't seem to apply to the very poor people, to the marginalized people. If they just do something really minor, you hear they've been caught, they've been locked up for 12 years within maybe 5 days or less. So in the UPND manifesto, one of the priorities was open up access to justice for all. How are you doing that? How are you going to make sure that at least there's some, even if it's a start, to look at how there's a level play field for everybody with justice?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Barbara, for that, and thank you for the kind words. The issue of access to justice is actually a very complex one in terms of where we sit as a country. I don't know how much time I have to discuss this topic, but it's one of those that is also very key. Access to justice starts not only from the perspective of legal representation on behalf of the accused persons, but also it goes to the question of whether we have facilities, sufficient facilities, sorry, I had to reboot that, sufficient facilities in the country to deal from an infrastructure perspective, with all the cases that we have, so we're talking about several players in this particular respect. The judiciary plays a role, of course, being the ones that determine the fate of those that are, especially for criminal matters, by the way, that's where the biggest challenge is. The government, through the Ministry of Home Affairs, plays a role in that the prison facilities, the correctional facilities, house these people. Now, what Dr. Barbara has described is actually not a situation where they get convicted. The biggest challenge that we have is for those who are less fortunate. In legal terms, we call them the indigent, the poor. When they get arrested for any offense, I'll really focus on the criminal justice system, because that's where the biggest challenge is. The process starts with the police investigating. If they don't get bond, there are conditions that apply to bond. For example, you need to have 2 working sureties. Some of those families cannot find those working sureties. This is something that I've seen in my own eyes from practice. When they go to court, there may be bail requirements which cannot be met, and these people end up being in correctional facilities as remandees for a very long time. And that is one of the key challenges that we have. It boils down to the very issues that we talked about a second ago with regard to having enough lawyers. The ideal situation is that everybody is entitled to legal representation. But then if you can't afford it, how are you going to get a lawyer? It's expensive across the world, not just in our jurisdiction. And that's where legal aid comes to play a role. And that's where access to justice begins. So one of the things we want to do, and cooperating partners are very key. I really hate the concept of a begging bowl, by the way. I'm not one of those that aspires for it. I think we need to be self-sufficient as a country. But in the meantime, we have real challenges of dealing with these matters. So cooperating partners are keen to come on board to ensure that we increase the staffing level across the country in terms of those that are willing to work in the legal aid sector. That costs money, but there's low-hanging fruit everywhere. Just last week, I was at the Law Association of Zambia conference. There's a reason I went there, of course, to consolidate the relations between government, as it were, on the one hand, and legal fraternity on the other. But also, I wanted to have a first-hand feel and discussion of the question of pro bono legal services by legal practitioners. It's now become a requirement that each lawyer should take at least a free case once a year or something like that. I think they want to increase it to 2. And that message was being reinforced at the Law Association of Zambia conference. And if this comes to pass, then that means that we'll be able to at least have more people defended and represented, so that they don't spend unnecessarily long in jail when they're detained as indigent people, as poor people. Also, we want to look holistically at the pieces of legislation, the penal code, which creates offenses. And that's one of the pieces of legislation that's going to Parliament to be looked at again. We also want to make sure that for minor offenses, really, you don't have the need to send people to custodial centers. There are many other ways of getting correction for miscreant behavior. And we need to look at that, because it doesn't make logical sense to simply send people to jail over the most minor things when we have many more important legal offenses that can be addressed. We want to also undertake what we are calling a prison audit. There are many people that are sitting in correctional facilities that ought not to be there. They either have not had trial, or their trial has only reached a certain stage, and then they sit in prison languishing, awaiting delivery of justice. We have to resolve that. A lot of those, by the way, are political cases where people were just simply taken and put in facilities on flimsy charges or none at all, pending trial. We need a prison audit to be done to clear out these. So there are a number of steps that are being taken to increase access to justice. But one of the key messages I have to put across is that the judiciary is severely lacking in infrastructure. They have cried. Even now, as we speak, the higher courts are such that, for example, the Constitutional Court does not have a place where it is housed on itself. It shares with the Supreme Court. And there's nowhere you go in the country where you will see anywhere written Constitutional Court of Zambia. That's so sad. Talk about in Wednesday, there are local government petitions that are taking place now. I had a colleague who was representing a party in a petition in Wednesday, and he says, you can cry when you look here and find that there are no chairs, there's no court building. Those are things that we need to address. And I think it's not to be put to the government, but we as a people, especially that we have members from the diaspora that are here listening to this, I think we have to find a formula of giving back. And that starts, of course, with knowing that there's accountability where you're giving those resources. And perhaps that's one of the things that we bring to the table as the New Dawn government. We want to ensure zero corruption. We want to ensure integrity is at the key of delivery, service delivery on our part as government. And maybe we'll have a lot more goodwill coming in and resolving some of these simple things that ought to be resolved. Because we can't be crying about money when we can put our heads together and find innovative ways of dealing with this.
Thank you, Honourable Haimbe. We have 10 minutes. Linda?
I'm glad, Honourable Haimbe, you touched on the diaspora being able to chip in situations where you need extra resources. Which leads me nicely to my next point, actually. But this would probably apply mainly to the Minister of Transport, but yourself as well, because you need various resources to make things happen. My major issue that we've had with the previous government, hopefully with the New Dawn, it's going to be a little bit different. As diaspora, we have a lot of people who would like to give back, but we may have resources, let's say equipment for the Ministry of Health, or even desks or computers, but we don't have the means to send them. We will be able to source these products, but we need assistance from the governments, different government institutions, to help us ferry these things at minimal cost.
Yes, okay. I suppose that's for noting. We can't find the solution sitting here, but I think that's a very important point. It is. I can tell you, for example, to give it a hands-on practical experience that I've gone through myself. When we were forming the Zambia branch of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, we needed reference material, books. And there's an entity that's housed in the UK that's known as Books for Africa. Nobody could tap into that resource. And there were books, thousands of pounds that were there, and it was simply about finding money to ferry them. So I hear what you're saying. Ultimately, we were able to go with our begging bowl around and raise enough money to ferry these books. But that is the low-hanging fruit that is available. And perhaps even from the perspective of ensuring that all key institutions like the Zambia Revenue Authority facilitate some of these things happening. We could help a school in Lusaka Central, for example, with computers and other materials. And if we are able to do this more frequently with different people, we can actually achieve a lot.
Definitely. With books and computers. Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you mentioned books and computers. I work with colleges and universities. There are times when they've shut down the entire department and they give me heaps and heaps of books, and they have to recycle old computers. It breaks my heart that I can't manage to send these things to different schools. So I think that would be quite good. I'll hand over to Vamunsha.
Andrew Butcher.
Good evening, Honourable. How are you doing?
Good evening. Thank you, Andrew. How are you doing?
Fine. I campaigned for you in the last election. I think we met at one of the centers just in my neighborhood, near Borderview.
Yes.
Nyumbayanga, somewhere there. Yeah, my main concern is just on most of these boards which are sitting under certain portfolios. I don't know why they haven't been dissolved up to now, and new people should be appointed, because the way it was in PF, most of these places were occupied by PF cadres. So I don't know how quickly the government can move in and get rid of these people. Because that's the reason why we changed the government. We don't want to be seeing the same people in this structure. Same offices.
Yes, Andrew, thank you very much for campaigning for me. I think you've seen the outcome. Let's not disappoint the people. I agree with you entirely that as part of the process of change, some of the key areas and institutions have to be looked at afresh. But that is not to say, of course, that you just take a holistic approach and just swipe everything, because there is institutional memory that you have to deal with. Let me just put it this way, that it's a work in progress. We're not sitting idle. The idea is to take an objective, fair process to ensuring that change is effected properly.
All right, thank you. Himba Mulambo, you now have 10 seconds.
Good evening, Honourable Nishmleseka.
It's okay.
Have you seen our names first?
Yes.
No, it's okay. You're okay.
Mwaishvana, Vahimba Mwaishvana.
Why Honourable? Honourable, me, I'm going to talk so much about Bowlen. And in Bowlen, I'm going to go down to the young people and the children in Bowlen. The kind of lifestyle and for the young people and children in Bowlen, it really needs attention. And even the mindset, I think I'm proposing that if you can come up with facilities or initiative that will help to change the mindset for the children and the youth in Bowlen. Because when you're in Bowlen, it's like you're not even in Zambia. It's like you're in a different city. What is happening? There's substance abuse, there's alcohol abuse. The moral decay in Bowlen, it's pathetic. And secondly, I also want to talk about the issue of, my Honourable, we want you to bring to book the people who were gassing. I'm so happy the way you've brought it out to say there were young people, children who were witnessing this. What kind of generation are we going to have? Even these who are insulting, these who insult in front of the children, they are actually corrupting the minds of the children. What kind of Zambia are we going to have? Because if insulting, please bring these people to book. They've actually polluted our community. They've destroyed our community. Honourable, please don't take time for the sake of the young generation and to save our Zambia.
Thank you.
I submit.
Thank you.
I think an important part of leadership is listening. That is an impassioned appeal. I'm alive to many of the things that Madam Haimbe has talked about. For example, there's an area in Bowlen known as B13, where you have the brewing of cachasso takes place, and you have a lot that goes on there, lots of illicit activity, and it's a function of poverty, unfortunately. It's not necessarily something that you can call as being localized to a particular area of Zambia, of Lusaka Central. If you go into Luangwa compound in Siwizia Ward, for example, the other end of Lusaka Central, you will find an area of similar challenges. Worse still, go into the central business district. Right now, people take capital in selling alcohol as early as 5 o'clock in the morning. They have those little bottles of chili and people are drunk. And it's a function of poverty. So as soon as we work on the economic challenges that we have, we expect to see a reversal of some of these things. But yes, there's also need for a concerted, directed effort for us as representatives of the people to do something about that. And certainly, I'll be calling on Madam Haimbe and other stakeholders. One of the key stakeholders that I am working with and want to continue working with is the church, because they have the capacity in terms of offering remedial steps for our young people, putting them on the straight and narrow again. And I'm working closely with, in Bowlen specifically, with the New Kasama Pastors Fellowship, with the Twin Palm Pastors Fellowship, with several other church organizations, because for me that is important. And we're capable of getting some kind of fix very quickly if we continue on that path. Right.
Thank you. Thank you. We've literally run out of time. But Chilufya, Mr. Patrick Chilufya.
I'll be quick, Mamusha. Just one question for Anjenje. Welcome to TVBAKWETU. Monishan. Congratulations. Just one quick question, by Honourable Minister. In our manifesto, and also the President has been talking about restitution, recovering what has been stolen. We all know that there's been a lot of corruption under the PF regime. We've seen it on the Auditor General's report. We've seen it on FIC report. And the President also mentioned about the fast-track court. And we also know that it's not easy to prosecute these big criminals. The UK came up with a law called lifestyle audit. So just on two, don't you think Zambia can come up with such a law to start prosecuting some of these criminals and recover what has been stolen? And what is happening with the fast-track court? When are we going to have it? Because people are so concerned that the pace at which the recovery or the prosecution of the criminals is so slow. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the immediate answer to your question is that if you are undertaking a genuine process that is expected to achieve a measurable outcome, the starting is always going to be difficult, because you have to ensure that you set up the necessary frameworks, processes, and so on and so forth to deliver a massive victory, if I may call it that. The question as to the legal framework, first of all, of prosecuting these matters, there are existing provisions in our laws that are sufficient to address the question of financial crimes. And the institutions are there: the Drug Enforcement Agency, the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Zambia Police, the Office of the DPP. What perhaps would need to be done for us to embed the mechanism that the President talked about is to enhance these institutions in terms of their capability of investigation, the tools they use for investigation, and several other matters. Secondly, on the judiciary side, we know that we have challenges even now as we speak, because the judiciary is understaffed. So for those fast-track courts to be put in place and to start operating effectively, you of course have to upskill and put in more manpower. Again, it comes back to a question of these things cost money, and you have to recruit and or realign many of these people that are working. So the long and short of what I'm saying is that yes, it may appear to have taken long, but it's not that the government and the necessary stakeholders are sleeping on the job. What is being done is a lot of work to put in place the tools, the delivery mechanism to ensure that we achieve what we need to achieve. We certainly don't want this to appear to be a witch hunt. We don't want it to appear that we are trying to seek retribution or to punish those that have been in the previous government. So that has to also be very, very clear, that when we take this process, it's an objective process aimed at addressing the question of those that may have got ill-gotten gains. But also, very importantly, I think a message needs to go out to those that may have involved themselves in this question of activities, that even as we speak now, the law allows them to come clean and simply say, look, I made an error. I should not have done this. These are the assets of the people of Zambia. I'm bringing them back. And it's very important. And yes, the law gives them a degree of protection for doing that, saving everybody's time and so on and so forth. Why am I saying this? Because when the law arm of the law starts to visit people by way of arrests and so on and so forth, there is no turning back. So it is at this point that they should come clean. And indeed, we all know, speaking from a layman's perspective, not as a government official, that as a citizen myself, I've been watching these reports and saying, oh, there seems to be a lot that has been taken away from the people of Zambia. And that goes straight to the question of whether at Cancer Diseases Hospital we'll have enough reagents to do some of the tests to determine whether the people are ill or not. Can you imagine in this day and age, people have to buy reagents at a very expensive cost in order to just get diagnosed. Some people come from all over the country, go to UTH, Cancer Diseases Hospital, and get turned back because there's the simple things like reagents are not available. And yet there are allegations that others have pocketed millions of kwacha, millions of dollars. I think we owe it to the people of Zambia to address this, and certainly it's being addressed. A time frame, I think, just watch the space, Bachilufia. I can't say much more than that, because of course everybody needs to understand that the nature of investigations in matters such as these are such that I can't go out telling everyone that, oh, nefi. You're telling the people who are out there that may have done wrong what next steps will be taken. You're arming them. So that's the most I can say for now.
Right. Thank you.
Good evening, Vada, Honourable.
Good evening,
we are very thankful, even though we've run out of time, but we are very thankful for you coming up and give us the feedback. My main question is on the issue of cyberbullying, the cyber law. I remember very well that His Excellency, during his campaigns, and talked a lot about this bill, that it should not actually be in existence. It should be repealed, if anything, taken out. Because we can see some daughter is using it against us, the media. So we don't want that to happen. And on the issue, I think you have already narrated the issue of the PF employees. I believe that you still have, even in your ministry, you still have people that were employed by the PF government, who, you know, their constitution talked about prioritizing them as what are you doing about it? Because the fear is that they are going to make your work difficult, as we've heard already in Windows that they have even reached the Minister of Land and destroying some evidence. So what do you take on that? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. The civil service, I think from the perspective of those that are charged with handling matters of the civil service, there is a process that is underway. His Excellency did ask, for example, for the DCs to go on leave. That was part of the process of examining to the extent to which we have some bad elements within the civil service. Of course, you can't say that everybody is a bad element. You can't say that simply because they were employed or promoted during the PF regime that they are a bad element. And perhaps this is where the frustration, I'm aware of the frustration from the people out there, is coming from, because it appears to be a little bit slow. And this is where you see a big difference between a conscientious leader and one that just wants to be popular for the sake of it. Unfortunately, at the risk of seeming slow and non-reactive, at the same time, we have to take a very objective, careful look at who is who, what they are doing, whether they've performed according to the way they ought to perform under the civil service mandates, whether they are cadres per se, and then act on that basis. So it will be a little bit slow. The only positive I can mention here on a public forum like this is that on the one hand, while you say that there are those that want to damage and destroy evidence and so on and so forth to hide the bad activities that may have been taking place, there are a huge number of loyal Zambians that are working in the civil service now that are proffering information, giving guidance and directives as to what was going on in the past and so on and so forth. And so we will heal this country as a people together. And that's another aspect I'd like to mention. There are provisions in the law out there to the civil servants that might be listening who feel a little bit scared to come out with this information. There are provisions out there which allow for you to be protected as whistleblowers. We owe it to the country. You can't leave it only to the elected officials to come up with a solution. It's a solution that all of us as Zambians have to play a part in. And I know that there is information from even even the lowest levels, even when you talk about the way markets and bus stations were run, for example, there are people who've become millionaires out there from getting money from poor bus drivers on a daily basis, on the pretext that that money is to be used for the welfare of the bus drivers, and they go and pocket it. All those would need to account. So it's a very huge exercise. I can only ask for people to be a little patient and also to play their part by bringing out information where they have it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have a very huge TVBAKWETU family. Unfortunately, we're already overshot by 10 minutes. And we are going to ask you, Honourable Haimbe, to come back so that you can answer all of our questions, because many are them that we have.
I would, sorry if just a second, I would like to comment that when I do come back, I would like to be giving a different perspective rather than what we will do. We will be talking about we have done this, because we are action oriented, and it's tiring to always be saying we'll do this. So when I come back, it's a promise that we'll say this has been achieved and this and this. There will be measurable deliverables. Sorry, that sounds wrong, but I promise that.
It's been a long day.
Percy?
Thank you. I know we've run out of time. There's something which is affecting us in the diasporas. That's the question I have, is for the diasporas. When it comes to dual nationality, I know it's there in the law, but there's some things whereby I have to go and apply for dual nationality. Why do I have to do that when I already have a Zambia national registration card? You know, because for example, I can give you one example, sir. When you look at the Spanish people when they're traveling to any other European country, they don't use their passport. They use their national registration cards. So why do you, the Zambian government, have to ask a Zambian with a national registration card to apply for dual nationality? I don't like that. That was my main question. And just the nice one, the thing I'm happy with, it's nice Bowman Lusambo is not near any ministerial position. And at last, we've got a Minister of Justice who's qualified as a Minister of Justice, not somebody who's got a diploma in agriculture. Thank you, sir.
A quick response. I think the time that the framework for dual nationality was being put in place, it was a very novel concept for Zambia. Of course, everywhere else it may not have been that novel. There's certainly need for an improvement in the way that that rights of citizens is administered. For example, the whole question of having to renounce your nationality in certain instances. Why must we have that? I think it's a huge question mark. And I agree entirely. In fact, the concept that you've talked about goes also to us as a continent in Africa. If our colleagues in Europe, for example, are able to loosen the movement requirements between countries in the continent, why can't we do so as Africa? I know there's a lot of work around creating a continental free trade area. Maybe when we start from the trade perspective and we get to know each other much better from that perspective, do business with one another on the continent, we can harness some of these things and improve our lot. Because really we are a rich people in this continent. Let's even just talk about the sub-region. Let's even just talk about Zambia. We have so much resource, but we are not harnessing it. And part of it is to give that freedom to citizens to move and feel that they are part of the bigger picture. So yeah, I think from a personal perspective and from a policy perspective, both, there is need to have a fresh look at that.
Thank you. Gladys?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Honourable, and welcome to BAKWETU family.
Thank you
I have a question, but I'll first start by quoting you what you said, that minor offences, we don't need to send people to custody. Well received. And my question is, are MPs covered under special laws? And I'm saying this because we have seen members of parliament who have been committing crimes, visible crimes, and I'll specifically mention the name because it's there in the public domain. The video which has been circulating around Kambwile explaining about Bowman Lusambo, who beat one of the UPND members who was striving with his life until he died and is walking scot-free. And what is your institution doing to such kind of member of parliament? What would you tell the public? Because I mean, we expect some kind of a justice, and also to give and also to show the public that something is being done. Because we've seen, I for one, I've seen that UPND is doing a great job, yes, but you are being very careful to say we don't want to be seen as people who are witch hunting. Could you kindly comment on that one? Thank you.
I think Honourable Haimbe is experiencing, he's just frozen there. Yeah, he's frozen there. This has been quite an interesting day, Linda.
It has. It really has.
Now, of course, there was that idea that we were on DSTV. KBN, our partner, has just let us know that there was no DSTV tonight. And the reason is because they were experiencing some fiber issues. Fiber optics or something like that. So we were not on DSTV, but we were on Topstar channel 102.
I've been receiving messages actually from different people saying we're turning on and turning off our DSTV. What's going on? So that explains it.
That could explain it. Honourable Haimbe, did you hear the last question from Sister?
Yes, I did. So I started to respond. Basically, no members of parliament do not enjoy any special law, especially in the criminal realm. Nobody is above the law. I can't talk about the allegations with regard to the death of that individual in Luansha, purportedly at the hands of Honourable Lusambo. And of course, perhaps also to give guidance that the Ministry of Justice, myself, we have no role to play in the execution of the functions of the law enforcement agencies. That is part of the need for them to be independent. So ours is to provide an enabling environment through legislative changes and so on and so forth. And of course, in the administrative space, to ensure that these institutions that are under the umbrella of justice receive the necessary funding and so on and so forth. But the law enforcement agencies don't sit under the Ministry of Justice. They are separate and distinct. The office of the DPP has got a functionality with the Ministry of Justice, but is independent. All we do is provide the environment. I can't as minister say, go and arrest Bowman. That would then be taking us back.
What a shame, Minister, what a shame.
Yeah, well, it's important to have that. But what we do is to make sure that those that are appointed in those offices have got the capability, the professional training to be able to execute their duties properly. And I know, for example, that Lemi Kajova, the current Inspector General of Police, is equal to the task. We'll certainly see befitting cases being tried the way they ought to be tried.
Okay. Linda? Having said that, and it's completely understandable, it's out of your hands, but don't you think that the Ministry of Information should be able to come out periodically and talk to us about these things, talk to us about, for instance, what is happening with cases like Bowman's? Instead of you, if you had not come on TVBAKWETU, people wouldn't have been privileged enough to know that it's not under your jurisdiction. Things like, I can't even begin to itemize all the things that have gone on that we feel the ministry should perhaps, because it's the gatekeeper of dissemination of information from the government. So it should be coming out. Don't you think it should be coming out, or it, as in the Minister of Information to be specific, should be coming out periodically to explain all these things that are really making people a little bit irked?
I think yes, that's one way of ensuring that the people's aspirations are met, that everyone is calm when you inform them on various issues. Of course, when it comes to cases in the courts of law or a criminal investigation, you have to balance it against the need, first of all, to respect the court processes and respect the rule of prejudice, to avoid subjudice in the way that court cases are handled. And from an individual level, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. So when you start to try them as government in the court of public opinion, then you are crossing a line that you ought not to cross. Perhaps when people are convicted, perhaps when the processes are going on, for example, you could have better reports. But from a broader perspective, I think one of the things that the Ministry of Information ought to do is to disseminate information. Create a package, a weekly package, for example. This is my personal view, of course. I'm not speaking as Minister of Justice when I say this, because of course we have collective responsibility. And I know certainly that's something that may be being looked at as a matter of fact. A weekly package on some of the key things, progress we are making, for example, in paying of debts and topical issues of the day, and you know, nipping those things in the bud. Because what's happening with the advent of social media is that someone will start a hot rumor, and if nobody puts it in check, it becomes a fact. And perhaps, yes, we can be more proactive in that way. I agree with you entirely, yes.
Yeah. This has been a presentation of TVBAKWETU. We sincerely thank the Honourable Mulambo Haimbe for having made it to come and speak to us today. I believe that we've all gotten a lot of information, a lot of learning in the past 2 hours that he's been with us. Honourable Haimbe, thank you very much for finding the time this late. I know that immediately after this show, you'll probably be attending to that dance from the house. I know what that means. My daughter is about 10 years old, and so we get to have that as well. Thank you very much for finding time. God bless you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you to everyone, Linda, Doc, everyone that's contributed, Bachilufia, Wamayo, Gladys, and everyone. Thank you so very much, Nadash. Thank you. And Nalumba, good night.
Nalumba Kabotu. God bless our country. Thank you.
Thank you.